and it was for mothers and daughters. And she said that the leader of the session said that when we bury things, things are buried alive. And it was like it hit me like lightning, because it was hand in hand with everything that I had experienced earlier that afternoon. And all this stuff was happening in me, and that it was here and I hadn't paid attention to it. And that I had put layers on top of it and had allowed my culture to put layers on top of it. That I had allowed my parents, my friends, my husband, and all my guilt and all my shame to push this stuff down. But it had life, and it was like, yes, this stuff is buried, and it's pushed down, and it's buried alive. And anything that is buried alive is going to worm its way out. It's going to seep out. It's going to seep out in your pores. It's going to seep out in your facial expressions, in the way you talk to people, in your voice, in the job you choose, and how you treat your children. And it's like, I don't know, it's like going back further into generations and generations, the shame we've discussed and the oppression we've discussed. And from ancient times, we've talked about matriarchal societies and patriarchal societies and cultures and all that stuff. And it's starting to come up to the forefront. And it's like the snake, the kundalini that's coming up, and it's snaking its way up, and it's coming all the way up through the crown, out of the mouth, coming out of the eyes. And we are no longer silent because we can't afford to be. I was thinking about my oldest daughter and how I wanted her hair to be like mine, and how she has really resisted having her hair like mine because my hair is in dreads. And she goes to school, and she's very much inundated with the white culture because all of her friends are white. So she wants her hair like that. And I started to think back of how when black women begin to straighten their hair. And that's the thing, that's a big deal in this black culture here in these United States, a big point of contention. When do you process your hair? Do you straighten it so it's a reflection of what white culture says is okay? I mean, they don't accept the nappy-headed one, you know, the one whose hair is too crinkly or too curly. And black people saying to their babies, you know, to their infant, you know, their hair is so curly. And when the infant gets a little older, about 6 months old, they say to their friend, oh, I hope their hair stays good. And they use the term good hair and bad hair. And it's synonymous with straight hair and nappy hair. And we do that. And it's like, my gosh. And if your child maintains a little curl or a little straightness, they like it. You know, my child has good hair. Or this child has nappy hair. It's bad hair, and it's kinky hair, and I got to get a comb to it, and I got to get a straightening comb to it, and got to comb those naps out, and I got to curl it and straighten it and make it look like what? And is it a denial? And there is so much assimilation in our race, where we see a little kid over there and they have nappy hair, or you see a kid right next to them and you give more attention to the other kid because maybe their skin is a little lighter and their hair, the curl is a little looser, and their eyes may be just a little lighter or a little bluer. And you look at the two children, and do you base their attractiveness on whether the child is lighter and their hair is good?
Some voices from the audience.
At this time, we ask the ancestors to come and join us as we unveil our wounds this evening, as we experience the healing and the communal love that I know is going to be among us. Welcome to Purses, Pockets, and Family Secrets. Tonight is a work in progress. Tonight's presentation is the fourth in a series of workshops. It is an emotional drama which involves some aspects of performance, but also invites your participation. If you feel you cannot give of yourself tonight, or if you cannot set aside the barriers of today, that might make you judgmental, voyeuristic, or diminish the energy of the moment, then I invite you to leave quietly now or at some place in the future. Purses and pockets are places where we keep things that no one else can see. As we experience wounding, hurting of any kind, whether physical or emotional, we are ashamed of our pain. We hide these wounds and our shame by keeping them secret, hidden in our purses and in our pockets. We artfully create masks and wrappings, a central metaphor of the work to protect ourselves against repeated harm. But they form barriers between ourselves and others. The more wounds, the more shame, the more masks, and before long we become a complex system of denials and avoidance. It is our hope tonight that we can begin, through Fanchon's example of public revelation, to name our wounds and acknowledge the pain they have caused us, to openly defy the power of shame. Sometime last fall, when Fanchon asked me to consult with her on this piece, I was able to say yes almost immediately because I know that in the African American culture, we have maintained and kept hidden our wounds. At a more personal level, I felt that there was a parallel between Fanchon's experience and my own personal experience in hiding my own personal wounds. And it was at some point that, as we began to talk about the piece and what the expectations were from it, I found that together we shared some very intense personal feelings, and she helped me with some of my own early healing of wounds. It is in the genre of Black women's literature that we explore the pain of Black women's experience. There traditionally has not been an avenue or an acceptable platform for Black women or Black men or Black children to come together and publicly disclose their pains. I would like to invite you now to take a few moments to read the material that is on the pass-out. You will explore the work of Maya Angelou in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She experienced the pain of rape, sexual abuse. You'll also read some of the works by Zora Neale Hurston. There is also a piece from Nella Larson's work, Alice Walker, and the slave narratives. So if you take a couple of minutes to just glean that material, it will give you sort of a feel for where we're going with tonight's performance. Fanchon will cry out. I invite you to participate in that. If you have a wound and you'd like to share in that pain, feel free to cry out, feel free to moan, to mumble, whatever you are comfortable with. But this is not real blood. This is not a real knife. This is the symbolism of the pain that she has experienced.
I let go of my illusions, like that I'd be famous someday, or that people would love me in numbers, vast numbers, you know. My mother always said, dance for them, Fanchon. Show them how you dance. Well, them is not me, and them is not my mother. Them is the invisible world that you cannot touch, see, know, feel, and is never really there for you when you need them. But they're what keeps you keeping your secrets. Them. So when I stop dancing for them, I can stop keeping my secrets so that they won't know. It's a little twist, but it made a lot of sense. I let go of a lot of things. And I let go of a lot of the ego that I needed to build to grow into a healthy person, so that some of the shaman could come in, just a little bit of room for the shaman. I remember that her voice started to go up, and I don't even remember why I forgot that. I remember that my mother's voice went up, and it went so loud. And I began to finally remember that when she went up so loud, she started to do it in another language. It was Yiddish. I had totally forgotten Yiddish. It was my birth belly tongue. But all I knew in it were curses and a few love words. Like Geschmackheit. What do you think that means? Geschmackheit. No. Yeah. Sweet. Süßkeit. Oh. You know what sweet with prunes and raisins and nuts and honey. A cholera on your head, because in the old days in Eastern Europe, a cholera came, and you know, the whole city was wiped out. So a cholera, an epidemic, that was a curse. And when a woman was powerless, she had nothing left to do but to say, "A cholera on your heads! When you die, may your body be vomited out by the earth." That's power. At least for a powerless woman. We're all afraid of those loud sounds. And our oppressors are afraid of our loud sound. And the pity was that my mother had to use her loud sound on her little baby girl because she was so wounded. Sound of our power, our love, our rage, our song. I mean, if we just start together, just trying that, like a little sigh. Let's just do a give up sigh. Try a few of them, they really feel good sometimes. Another one. Now just let that sound kind of drop and resonate, kind of stay down there. Now just let it go. Yes, 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 yes. No, no, no. He started to tell me a story that blew my mind, but it answered why my mother was such a hysterical woman. But dare I tell this revelation, which will explain the shame and the humiliation and the abandonment my mother felt, which affected all her treatment of me? Or should I keep it a secret? Because to tell African Americans about a Jew in this way may increase the stereotype of anti-Semitism. African Americans hold back from revealing secrets in public because they feel that those secrets will fuel racism against their people. So let me warn you and ask you to listen to this story in this context. Jews have always been identified as people who deal with money. It is a vicious distortion but it carried on. It was so vicious it supported the Nazi Holocaust. It is a lie, but it does so happen that Jews have not had their own land for 2,000 years, and they lived in every other country in the world, and they were not allowed to own land. The only jobs they were given were moneylender, exchanger, bill collector, jobs that gave them middle places. And because they wanted to survive, they did it the best way they could. And so many Jews got into banking, got into money lending, got into exchanging when they came to America. And my grandfather was a good man, and he had a small bank, and he, during the Depression, was one of the only bankers who paid his creditors before he went bankrupt. Many of the other bankers went bankrupt and kept their money, but he paid his creditors before it. The story goes that when my father married my mother, he had 2 brothers, and they were in a tobacco business. And he bribed the judge. He saved my father from jail. But my father got into a big argument with my grandfather about money and broke with him after that. And my mother had to cleave to her husband and leave the entire nourishment of that loving family that she grew up with. And she lost her entire support. So I was raised by a woman cut off from her life support. Does that story make sense? Yeah? And it's a story that has never been told to any member of my family. And no matter how much my mother cursed my father, she never told me that story. That's the point. She told me about how bad he was, how she found him in bed with another woman. She told me all the horrible stuff, but she never told me that story, because her loyalty was to her husband at the expense of herself.
I lost my father when I was very young, about 6 months of age. This is our secret. Somewhere around the time when I was 12 or 13, one of my closest friend's mother said, "Tell me, what is your last name? Can't let anyone know. Is your family from Cleveland?" "Yes, I grew up there," I answered. "No. Was your father's first name John?" "Yes, it was." "Shh. Oh, you're the daughter of the man who was electrocuted." "No, what? No, what happened on this chair?" All I ever knew was that I was so stunned.
I did not know my mother or father, or that they existed. I knew that somewhere I had another family of origin.
Of my daughter and my other daughter's husband.
What? You are a Jew. You must understand that whatever happened to me can happen to you. And my escape, I had to leave.
One day, the woman I finally called Grandma
He has to go to Grandpa's.
told me the story of my birth and
Grandpa's family was.
how I came to live with her and my grandpa.
He has to
At
go
that
to
point,
Grandpa's. He has to go.
I wanted to find my Ohio
Grandpa's
family.
will raise him. He can't stay here.
In the process, I learned my mother had been dead for a great number of years.
Get him out of here.
I am still not sure I know who my father is, but I found aunts and cousins.
He can't
I
stay.
learned I have a sister and brother in the Chicago area.
The child
I am still
of my
looking
daughter
for my sister
and my
and
other
brother.
daughter's husband. No, he cannot stay.
I'm
Get
still
him out.
looking for my sister and brother.
He has to go.
I mean, that's Lillian. He can't even call her by name. Now, when I walked down that aisle, I had Lillian on this side. She had not talked to him in 15 years, and he had not talked to her in 15 years. And I had her on the left arm and him on the right arm. And if you think 2 Mack trucks are easy to lift as you walk down the aisle, you are mistaken. this was supposed to be my blessing at my wedding. Well, go on with
When
it.
God will help them and bless them to raise a family of their own, they will understand when I say I am happy. Thank you.
I took my little brother.
Yeah, I signed my name. I signed my name.
I said he wanted to have some booze,
so
but
I had
drink.
I had
God,
and I started
I shouldn't have done
it.
I shouldn't have done that.
My dreams are haunted.
Anyway, it was my fraternity brothers, and we were Russian.
Everyone knows that
There was
it's
this
a
black
lot
guy,
of
he
dreams,
was in
no
the
one
Russian with us.
except me.
A Jewish kid.
Anyways, I told her,
I don't know.
look here, bro.
I was there with all those other guys.
I took my arms around her
My
neck.
father.
I started straining her.
I knew what my father had done.
She thought I was just playing
I didn't
around.
want to tell anybody because if I told anybody, you know, I could really stop.
I couldn't stop and started straining her.
So I did this girl, and I'm just like, yeah, sure.
Promise you will keep the secret.
We won't tell.
Okay. Shh. He tried to kill himself again.
Don't ask why. Shh. Don't ask why.
Yes. Shh.
How awful.
Oh, what a shame. What a shame. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. What a shame.
Sometimes it's fun to have a secret. Only we will know it. It's our magic secret.
Oh.
Most people have some hidden secrets, hidden very deeply, deeply in their being.
Oh, shame hides our soul.
Shame hides our soul.
Shame hides our soul. It hides our soul. It hides our soul. It hides. It hides our soul. Shame hides our soul. It hides our soul. It hides our mystery and magic. Our power, our insight, and shame makes us believe that we are all tides of lands in the world.
An ocean home.
A broken home, a wounded home, a healing home,
A loving home.
A soulful home.
a magic home, a mountain home, a desert home,
A fresh air home.
An eagle home.
an insect home, a gopher home, a beaver home,
An elder home.
A tribal home.
a family.
In May 1935, at the age of 51 years old, Lillian Callis Wexler, already mother of a 25-year-old daughter, a 20-year-old son, and a 10-year-old son, discovered that she was 5 months pregnant. My father had left her again a few weeks earlier, and on August 30th, her 25-year-old daughter took mother to the hospital. As mother labored to give me birth, she felt a great need to have a bowel movement. The doctor said she could go to the toilet. She did, and there felt my head beginning to crown. She always told me that she was screaming hysterically, that she had almost lost me down the toilet. She was rushed to the delivery room, where they began to give her anesthesia, and she screamed, "My false teeth!" alarmed lest she choked to death on the gas of her own false teeth. I emerged miraculously whole, despite the umbilical cord around my neck. In this frantic, turbulent atmosphere, with an aging, hysterical mother preoccupied with her own physical emergency, I first drew breath. I was 6, and I had diarrhea, sitting on the potty chair next to my bed. It was dark. My mother and father were quarreling. Mother's screaming, "Ach, leer je dein Kopf, kann man nicht zu Platz nicht werden, a collar on your head, such a year for mine enemies as a year of meine Sonnen, you street angel." My father packed right there as I sat on the pot. And then I heard the kitchen door close behind him. Lillian erupted. "The dirty, rotten SOB, he's left me alone. He drives around like a king. And I don't even have enough money to take care of you, Fanchan. I found him in my own bed with another woman. He doesn't even care if we live or die." It wasn't until I was 51 years old myself that I realized she might have comforted me. She might have reassured me that we would survive, that I would be protected, that poor though she be, she was blessed by my presence. My mother touched me sweetly, touched me with strong massages, washed me with alcohol rubs when I was sick. She sat on my bed all night long. She used wonderful Yiddish words of endearment as she cleaned and kissed me. Lichtige Welt, light of the world, schöne Mödele, beautiful little girl. I slept in bed with her from soon after my father left until I was 11, and I left. I needed her touch. She washed my hair with a passion and combed out the tangles. She washed herself under her arms in the voluminous folds of fat surrounding her private parts. She was so clean, she smelled like a flower. She was deathly afraid of germs. She would warn me, never, never touch the dog in the mouth, and wash your hands. You will get germs. Dirty, dirty. She would get down on her knees, naked, to scrub the tub after her bath, and I would watch her from behind, staring into her dark openings of mysterious vagina and buttocks. I remember imagining myself climbing back into her womb, wishing I would not have been born from her, but wishing I could be born from someone else, so my father would love me. I thought it was her fault that I had no father, and I wished I had another mother, and that was betrayal. I betrayed my mother. I abandoned her, there, looking into her fat behind at age 7. It wasn't until 4 years later that I walked out of her house, and I walked myself alone to my sister's house, 4½ miles away, begging to live with her. 97 years old. My poor mother, she finally goes out for an evening. She leaves me with the old father of our live-in